All right, so buckle up, everybody, because today we are diving into a statement that will probably raise some eyebrows.
Yeah, this is a spicy one.
World War III
Whoa.
has already begun.
Okay.
And yeah, I know it sounds like we're about to break down the latest Tom Clancy thriller.
Right.
But this actually comes from a speech by Jamie Dimon,
Oh, wow.
the CEO of J.P. Morgan Chase.
Okay, so this is serious stuff then.
No, so this is
Not some random guy on Twitter.
yeah, this is a guy who knows a thing or two about global finance and power.
Yeah, or
So
definitely raises an eyebrow.
it does.
I think it's important to keep in mind, though, that Dimon was giving this speech to a room full of finance folks.
Right.
Not, giving a briefing at the Pentagon or anything like that.
It wasn't a war room.
No, exactly.
It was a boardroom.
Yeah, and here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
His speech landed on the very same day as the BRICS summit.
Okay, hold up, BRICS now.
Yeah.
For those of us who maybe don't follow global politics religiously,
Yeah, not everyone's got time for that.
what's the big deal with that?
Good point. Good point. Let's clarify. BRICS stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa.
Okay.
And it's essentially a group of major countries, none of them traditionally aligned with the West,
Right.
who are looking to, kind of flex their collective muscle on the world stage.
Show off a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. And they even invited a few more countries to the summit, too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you had Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, the UAE.
Okay, so a pretty diverse group there.
Yeah, very much so. And so Diamond giving this World War III speech on that same day.
Yeah, coincidence.
Yeah, hard to imagine it's a complete coincidence.
So maybe what he's talking about then isn't just about troops and missiles, but it's about power shifting globally.
Right.
And maybe this time around the weapon is money.
Exactly. It's not just about tanks and bombs. This is about a change in the way the world operates economically, politically, culturally even,
Okay, so it's kind of like I don't know, imagine the world is like an exclusive club.
I
right?
think that.
It's got VIP members.
Yeah.
And the West, used to run the show.
They had all the best seats.
Called all the shots. But now these other countries, they want
a seat at the table.
They want a seat at the table, and that means the rules might change.
For everyone.
For everyone.
Exactly.
So it's a very interesting analogy there. But let's get back to Dimon now.
Yeah.
He didn't just throw out this World War III line and call it a day, right?
Oh, no. He went into some detail.
So what was he actually saying?
Well, he talked about...
Give us the goods.
Yeah, he used some pretty strong language talking about battles on the ground being coordinated in multiple countries.
Coordinated?
Yeah, and he even went so far as to say that this is a bigger threat than climate change.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a pretty bold statement.
That's a pretty bold statement coming
What's
from
a
guy who's in charge of
a lot of money.
A lot of money. And arguably knows a thing or two about risk.
Yeah, he's not prone to hyperbole, you would think.
Right. So
You wonder.
Before we jump to conclusions here, why would a bank CEO be talking like this?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
I mean, it's not typical banker talk, is it?
Not exactly, no.
But think about it for a second. Someone like Dimon has a front row seat to the global economy.
Right.
He's seeing how these geopolitical shifts can directly impact the financial world.
Right.
And remember, this BRICS summit wasn't just a social gathering. They were discussing some pretty significant things.
Right.
What?
Well, like challenging the U.S. dollar's dominance, for example.
Wait, they want to knock the dollar off its throne?
Yeah, that's the idea.
What would that even mean for, regular people?
Well, for one thing, your dollar might buy less in the future.
Oh, no.
Making travel or imported goods more expensive.
Okay, so hitting my wallet.
Exactly.
That gets my attention.
Yeah, and it could even shake up global trade as we know it. Wow, okay, so Dimon sees this coming, and that's why he's dropping these World War III warnings.
It's a possibility.
It's a possibility, but let's break down his argument.
Right.
Before we decide if he's a visionary or...
For just a fearmonger.
Just a fearmonger. Yeah, so the article we've got lays out his claims about these coordinated battles, the nuclear threat, and this whole idea of the Western order being dismantled.
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack.
It's pretty intense.
Yeah.
So let's start with the first one, these coordinated battles.
Okay, so are all these conflicts truly coordinated? What's the evidence?
Right.
I mean, we've got the war in Ukraine, obviously, and the situation between Israel and Palestine, which has been flaring up again recently.
Right.
But are they connected beyond just happening at the same time.
Yeah, it seems like Diamond's drawing a line between them,
Yeah.
saying that it's all part of this
Right, this bigger power struggle.
this bigger power struggle.
Right, but is that actually the case?
That's the question.
That's the question. Yeah. I mean, on the surface, they appear to be distinct conflicts with their own complicated histories.
Right.
But if we zoom out a little bit and look at the broader geopolitical landscape, some interesting connections do start to emerge.
Okay, I'm all ears.
All right.
Okay.
Well, let's think about who's involved and who's backing whom.
Okay.
You've got Russia supporting Syria,
Right.
which impacts the Middle East, and Iran supplying drones to Russia,
Right.
which is influencing the war in Ukraine.
Mm.
Then there's China quietly expanding its influence in both regions.
So it's like everyone's kind of playing this high-stakes game of risk,
Yeah, it's a good analogy.
throwing their pieces around the board. But how does this affect someone who's not like a foreign policy expert?
Right.
Like, why should I care about this World War III idea if it's not literally bombs dropping on my street tomorrow?
Yeah, that's a fair question. And the answer is that even if you're not interested in international relations, these events have very real consequences for everyone.
Okay.
Think about supply chains, for example. The war in Ukraine has already disrupted global wheat and energy markets.
Yeah.
If these conflicts escalate, it could mean shortages and higher prices on everyday things like groceries and gas.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed prices going up at the grocery store lately.
Right, and it makes you realize how connected we all are, even to conflicts happening on the other side of the world.
Right.
And beyond just prices, there's the economic impact as a whole. This level of global instability can lead to slower economic growth, potentially even a recession.
It's not good.
No, not at all. And then there's the increased risk of future conflict as these power struggles intensify the chances of a major war involving the U.S. or its allies, they start to rise.
So World War III might not be happening in the traditional sense,
Right.
but it's more like this slow-burning conflict
Yeah.
with the potential to disrupt everything.
Everything.
From the
Yeah.
global economy to our
Yeah.
everyday lives.
That's a great way to put it. It's a war being fought on multiple fronts: economic, political, technological, even ideological.
And Diamond, with his finger on the pulse of the financial world,
Yeah.
is seeing these trends unfold firsthand.
He's got a front row seat.
He's got a front row seat, so it makes you wonder, is he just trying to warn people?
Or is there something else going on?
Is there something else going on? Yeah.
That's the key question, isn't it?
It is to understand his motives.
Mhm.
I think we need to look at the broader context of his background
Yeah.
and his place in the world.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got this picture of a world kind of, in a state of flux with these power struggles simmering in the background.
It's like a pot about to boil over.
But let's talk about Jamie Dimon specifically for a second here.
Okay. Yeah, he's a fascinating character.
The article mentions he's a Democrat,
Right.
supported Kamala Harris,
Yeah.
and was even rumored to be in line for Treasury Secretary if she had won.
Yeah, there are definitely some whispers about that.
So is that coloring his perspective here?
I mean, it's possible, right?
Could he be overstating the threat? Maybe even trying to influence things in a certain direction?
I think we have to remember that even someone as powerful as Jamie Dimon has biases just like anyone else.
Right.
His experience in the financial world, his political connections, all of that shapes how he sees the world.
So maybe this World War III talk is partly genuine concern, but also partly a way to advance certain agendas.
It's definitely not out of the realm of possibility.
It's starting to sound a little bit like a conspiracy theory here.
Well, let's not jump to conclusions.
Okay.
It's important to consider all angles, I think.
Right.
Could Diamond be trying to influence policy
Yeah.
or even benefit financially from this narrative?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's also possible that he genuinely believes what he's saying, even if his motives aren't entirely pure.
So it could be a mix of genuine concern and strategic maneuvering.
I think that's a pretty fair assessment.
Like he sees these trends happening and genuinely thinks it's a problem,
Yeah.
but he's also maybe using that to his advantage.
Right, playing both sides a little bit.
Exactly.
It's rarely a black and white situation, especially when you're dealing with someone who operates at that level of power and influence.
Okay, fair enough. So let's say we accept that the world is in a state of flux,
Yeah.
that these power struggles are real, and that the potential for conflict is higher than it's been in a while.
Okay.
What are we supposed to do about it?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Do we all need to start building bunkers and hoarding canned goods?
I don't think we need to go that far.
Or-
It's not about panicking. It's about being prepared.
Okay, so what does that mean, being prepared?
Well, First and foremost, it's about being informed.
Staying up to date on current events.
Yeah, reading beyond the headlines,
Hmm.
seeking out diverse perspectives.
So no burying our heads in the sand.
Definitely not. The more we understand about the forces at play, the better equipped we'll be to make informed decisions.
Okay, so that's the knowledge part. What about the action part?
Right, well, that's where we get into things like financial planning and risk management. Remember that quote from Warren Buffett about holding assets, not just cash, during times of instability?
Right, because if inflation goes crazy, your cash becomes worthless.
Exactly.
But what kind of assets are we talking about here?
Well, the article specifically mentioned farmland and real estate.
Okay, farmland, interesting, but isn't that a pretty specialized investment?
It can be, yeah.
I don't exactly have a green thumb.
Yeah, farmland does require a certain level of knowledge and expertise, but it's often seen as a safe haven asset because it has intrinsic value.
Okay,
People always need to eat, regardless of what's happening in the world.
that's true. And what about real estate?
Yeah.
Is that really a good hedge against global instability?
Real estate can be a solid investment in uncertain times, especially if you own rental properties. As long as people need places to live, there will be demand.
Right.
Plus, real estate tends to keep pace with inflation, so it can protect your purchasing power.
So it's not just about stashing cash under your mattress. It's about strategically investing in things that will hold their value, even if the world goes a little haywire.
Exactly. And beyond specific investments, it's about diversifying your portfolio. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, as the saying goes.
Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Spread your investments across different types of assets.
Yeah.
Stocks, bonds, real estate, precious metals,
Uh-huh.
even things like art or collectibles.
It's about having a mix that can weather different economic conditions.
It sounds like you're describing a doomsday prepper portfolio.
Well, not quite. It's more about being prepared for any eventuality. Think of it as building a financial fortress that can weather any storm.
Okay, I like that analogy.
Yeah.
So we've covered Diamond's claims, the geopolitical landscape, and some strategies for navigating this uncertain future. Let's circle back to Diamond himself for a moment.
Okay.
Do you think his World War III warning is ultimately a good thing or a bad thing?
That's a tough one.
Is he helping or hurting the situation?
It's a complex question. I think on one hand, he's raising awareness of very real trends that most people aren't paying attention to. But on the other hand, he's doing it in a way that could create fear and panic, which never leads to good decisions.
So it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
He's shining a light on a problem, but he might also be making it worse in the process.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to engage with this information critically, to think for ourselves and not just blindly accept what someone like Diamond is telling us.
Right. We need to be informed, but we also need to be discerning. We can't just react out of fear. We need to think strategically about how to navigate this new world.
Absolutely. And that's where critical thinking skills come in. We need to be able to evaluate information from multiple sources, identify biases, and make our own judgments about what's credible and what's not.
Okay, so we've got to be informed, be discerning, and think critically. What else can we do to prepare for this World War III scenario, even if it's not playing out in the way we traditionally imagine?
Well, beyond financial preparedness, there's also the emotional and psychological aspect. We're living in a time of heightened anxiety and uncertainty, and that can take a toll on our mental well-being.
So how do we deal with that?
Well, it's a great question, and it's something a lot of people are struggling with these days. I mean, those are certainly helpful practices, but it's also about building resilience.
Okay.
It's about developing healthy coping mechanisms for stress, strengthening our relationships, and finding sources of meaning and purpose in our lives.
So it's not just about surviving, it's about thriving,
Exactly.
even in the face of adversity.
And I think that's a really crucial message to remember, especially when we're constantly bombarded with these doom and gloom predictions.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in that.
It is.
Yeah.
But we have the power to choose how we respond to these challenges.
We do.
We can choose to be fearful and reactive, or we can choose to be proactive and resilient.
I like that it's empowering to remember that we have agency even in a world that feels increasingly chaotic.
Absolutely. And that agency starts with understanding the forces at play, assessing our own vulnerabilities, and taking steps to mitigate the risks.
So it's not about burying our heads in the sand.
No.
Or panicking and running for the hills.
Definitely not.
It's about finding that balance
Yeah.
between being informed and being proactive.
Exactly. Finding that sweet spot where we're aware of the potential dangers, but not paralyzed by fear.
Right, and that's a great point to keep in mind. We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
From Diamond's World War III, warning to the geopolitical landscape to practical strategies for navigating this uncertain future.
Yeah, we've been all over the map.
But before we wrap up, I want to make sure we address the big question that's probably on everyone's mind.
Okay, what's that?
The question everyone's thinking is Diamond right?
Uh-huh.
Are we really in World War III?
Yeah.
And if so, what does that mean for our lives, for our future?
Yeah, that's the big one, isn't it?
It-
It's the question looming over everything we've discussed. And,
Yeah.
while there's no crystal ball that's going to give us a definitive answer,
Right.
I think the more important takeaway here is this: whether or not we label it World War III, the world as changing.
Yeah.
And it's changing in really profound ways.
It's like that board game Risk, but in real life.
Yeah,
Alliances are shifting, power dynamics are being challenged, and the old rules no longer apply.
exactly. And just like in a game of Risk, there are winners and losers. The question is, how do we position ourselves
Right.
so we're not on the losing side?
So let's talk strategy then. We've touched on the financial side.
Yeah.
Diversifying investments,
Yeah.
holding assets like farmland and real estate. But is that enough?
Well, it's a good start, but it's also about more than just money.
Okay.
It's about building resilience in all areas of our lives. Think about it. If the world is becoming more unpredictable,
Yeah.
we need to be adaptable, resourceful, and able to think on our feet.
So it's not just about having a bunker full of supplies. It's about having the mental and emotional fortitude to handle whatever comes our way.
Precisely, it's about developing those anti-fragile qualities,
Okay.
where challenges and setbacks actually make us stronger.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
So how do we build that kind of resilience? Is it something you're born with or can you learn it?
It's definitely something you can cultivate.
Okay.
It starts with being aware of your own strengths and weaknesses, understanding your stress triggers, and developing healthy coping mechanisms.
For example, what are some practical things people can do?
Well, building strong relationships is key. Having a supportive network of friends and family you can rely on is essential in times of stress.
Yeah, your people.
Your people, exactly. And also, finding activities that bring you joy and purpose can help buffer against the negativity, whether it's volunteering, pursuing a hobby, or simply spending time in nature. Those things can make a big difference.
Right. So it's about taking care of our mental and emotional health,
Yeah.
just like we take care of our physical health.
Exactly. And that includes things like getting enough sleep, eating a healthy diet, and exercising regularly. Those things might seem basic,
Right.
but they lay the foundation for resilience in all areas of our lives.
Right. You can't fight a war, even a metaphorical one, if you're running on fumes.
Exactly. So we've talked about financial preparedness, mental and emotional resilience, taking care of our physical health. Is there anything else we should be thinking about?
Yeah. Anything else?
One more crucial element, I would say, is staying informed, but not just in a passive way.
Okay.
It's about being actively engaged with the world, seeking out information from diverse sources, and being willing to challenge our own assumptions.
So no more doom scrolling on social media.
Doom scrolling definitely won't help. It's about finding reliable sources of information, understanding the biases inherent in different media outlets, and being critical thinkers. It's also about having conversations with people who hold different viewpoints, even if those conversations are uncomfortable.
That sounds challenging, especially in today's polarized climate.
It is, but it's essential if we want to make informed decisions and avoid getting swept up in fear-mongering or propaganda. Remember, knowledge is power, and in a world that's changing as rapidly as ours, knowledge is our greatest asset.
So it's not about retreating into our bunkers. It's about equipping ourselves with the tools and knowledge we need to navigate this complex and ever-evolving world.
Exactly, and I think that's a message of hope, even amidst all the uncertainty. We're not powerless. We have the ability to learn to adapt and to shape our own destinies.
And maybe, just maybe, by doing so, we can create a future that's better than the one Diamond is predicting.
That's the goal, isn't it? To create a world where World War III remains a hypothetical scenario, not a lived reality.
Well said. So, to our listeners, I hope this deep dive has given you some food for thought. Jamie Dimon might be right about a changing world order, but whether it leads to World War III or something else entirely, the choice is ours.
The choice to be informed, the choice to be prepared, and the choice to build a future that's resilient, sustainable, and ultimately hopeful.
On that note, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay resilient.